Welcome to That Boxing Writers Podcast, the weekly podcast show about boxing. I'm That Boxing Writer, Jeremy Harridges, and let's start the show. Hello, fight fans, and welcome to episode 1 of That Boxing Writers Podcast. I'm That Boxing Writer, Jeremy Harridges. Happy to finally get this endeavor off the ground, something that I've wanted to do for a long time. Hopefully, this is the first of many podcasts that we'll be having. The plan is to have a new episode with guests every week. The plan is to have them come out at noon Central Time on Thursdays. And I'm going to try to have at least 2 guests on per episode. This one we got a lot more than 2. I'll take you through the rundown in just a bit. But what a kickoff episode do we have for you today? Truly excellent. To give you a little bit more info about the podcast itself, you have the audio version that you might be listening to now. That one is you can find on the That Boxing Writer page on Spreaker, but it's going to be everywhere where podcasts are distributed, whether it's Spotify, Amazon Music, and of course, Apple Podcasts. So jump on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and if you could, after you watch this whole thing put together, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I want to hear from you guys. So more comments, more feedback, the better. Let me have it. All right. So that's that. Now, if you want to watch the episode, you can go to my YouTube channel, That Boxing Writer. If you type in That Boxing Writer or tag that onto the normal URL of YouTube, you will find me. Subscribe to that, hit the notifications button, and you can see this podcast and not just hear it. So there you go. So for those of you that just found me or are hearing about me for the first time, why should you listen to anything that I have to say about boxing? Here's why. I've been a boxing journalist since 2011. I started with BleacherReport.com. I've had bylines in SI.com and Boxing News and Inked Magazine, just to name a few. I've been the lead boxing contributor for Fansided.com over the last 4 years. That's my main gig. If you want to read some of my work, go to fansided.com/boxing. I'm sure you'll find something there from me, so you can check that out as well. On my YouTube page, you can see my socials at the bottom and all that good stuff, and join the TBW fam, as I like to call it. So we want you in that Boxing Writer family. Trying to build up a community, doing a nice job so far, and hopefully this podcast is the next evolution of building up that TBW fam. So glad to have you guys with us for today. Let's take you through the itinerary for today, and I've got it all mapped out here. So if you see me looking down on YouTube right now, that's why. We're going to start off with the segment where I break down the news of the week. Then we've got an exclusive interview with Joey Spencer, super welterweight, who's fighting this Saturday on Fox at 8 p.m. Eastern time. He's going to be a breakout star, I think. Someone that's really special, someone that you're going to watch. So we got Joey Spencer on the program. After that, we're going to be talking to my guy, Lucas Cattell, a.k.a. Lukie Boxing, who runs the itrboxing.com website and also has a podcast and a YouTube channel of his own. We're going to talk to him about the Olympics. He breaks down the Olympics in detail, tells us the fighters, the fights, who's going to be the next big stars, all that good stuff. So we got Lukie on a deep dive on the Olympics, so you don't want to miss that. Then I talk a little bit about Conor Benn versus Adrian Granados, which is the other fight card for the weekend. That's Matchroom's fight card on DAZN this weekend, probably starting around 1 p.m. Central Time if you're in the States. That's just off the top of my head. That's usually when they do things. But the Matchroom card, it's part of the Matchroom Fight Camp in Brentwood. I'm going to share with you my little mini conversation that I had with Conor Benn during the media calls for that fight card. And so I'll break that down. Then I'll share with you guys my chat with Anthony Fowler, then my chat with Campbell Hatton, and that should do it. So quite an episode. Let's go through those names again. Joey Spencer, Lukie Boxing, Conor Benn, Anthony Fowler, and Campbell Hatton. Boom. Gotta like it. So that's what we've got going on for today. But let's talk about what we've got going on in boxing throughout the week. Last weekend's card featured heavyweight undefeated contender Joe Joyce, also known as the Juggernaut, versus Carlos Takam. So he did what he was supposed to do. He got Takam out in, what was it, 6 rounds, TKO. Some people complained about the stoppage, but I thought it was a fair stoppage. Takam wasn't answering back. If the guy's not going to fight back, then you have to save him from himself. He's trying to be tough, trying to stay in there and take him, but he's not firing back. He's a sitting duck. Joe Joyce, the Juggernaut, took him out. It was a good stoppage. What did we learn from that fight? Nothing that we didn't already know about Joyce. He's big and he's strong, and he can take a punch. He did all of those things in that fight. I have a weekly column on Fansided called After the Fight. If you do hashtag After the Fight on Twitter, you'll probably see it pop up or some tweets about it. But I broke down, can Joe Joyce be a champion? My answer, and to quickly summarize that piece, can he? Yes. Will he? Probably not. And mostly because if you're talking about Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, can he beat those types of fighters? Can he? Yeah. Will he? No. I just don't see enough from him to show me that he can really beat those opponents. A little bit too slow with the hand speed, feet are a little bit too slow. Punching power is great, but I just don't see him beating that level of fighter. That's just my personal assessment of Joe Joyce. I even said in my column, I hope he makes me eat those words because he seems like a truly remarkable person, and I'd like to see him break into that category. So we'll see. He's 35 years old. Time's running out. Kind of slow going. There are 2 cards on this weekend, but and there'll continue to be boxing cards, but we're really on pause until later in August when we finally get Errol Spence versus Manny Pacquiao. The big news of the week, which everyone was tweeting about and talking about, I didn't really touch it, but it's reported from ESPN's Mike Coppinger that the talks between Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant are over, that they've broken down. We're probably not going to see that fight. Those minor stipulations in the contract have turned into a big deal. Caleb Plant talked to ESPN just the other day, shared 2 of the sticking points. Number 1, that if Caleb Plant gets injured, then Canelo can continue to fight. However, he demands that he still gets $40 million. That's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. He's not going to get a career payday versus a nobody or versus a guy that's not an A-level fighter. So you should be able to negotiate that down to $25 million and call it a day. The other stipulation was that if Canelo gets injured, that Caleb Plant can't go ahead and fight. I don't know. I feel like if Caleb Plant did go ahead and fight, why would he have a problem with it? Especially if he's fighting an Anthony Durrell. Maybe he thinks it would push the fight back even further. I don't know. Those don't seem like 2 hard things to negotiate to me. It feels like it's got to be more than just those 2 things. And even Caleb said, well, these are just 2 examples. Well, what are the other examples? And we haven't heard from Canelo yet. We are hearing from one side and one side only. There's 2 sides to every story. So I have a hard time believing that it's just those 2 things holding up all of this. I can't believe that. So I'll be curious to hear what Canelo Alvarez has to say. I hold out hope that we can still get it. As everyone points out, the clock's ticking. If you're having a fight on September 18th, you still got to have a training camp, and we're losing time for that. But come on. These guys are professional fighters. I guarantee you they're training right now as we speak, hoping that this fight gets made. They're not going to sacrifice time. Can it get made? I think it can. Will it? That's the big question mark. I'm not giving up hope. I'd rather see him versus Canelo versus Plant than I would versus him versus Artur Beterbiev or Dmitry Bivol. Here's why I say that. If he fights Bivol, I think it turns into a boring boxing match and Canelo wins on points. If he fights Beterbiev, I think he knocks out Beterbiev within 8 or 9 rounds. I was there when Callum Johnson hurt Beterbiev. If Callum Johnson can hurt Beterbiev, I think Canelo can hurt him too. Now, Beterbiev is a better boxer today than he was back then, but he's also an older boxer. So that's my thing. I just predicted things for you. Caleb Plant offers up the biggest question mark. Now, I'm not saying I think Caleb Plant wins, but what I'm saying is we don't know how good Caleb Plant is yet. He hasn't fought elite talent, and you can't make a judgment on a fighter like Caleb Plant until you've seen him against elite talent, and nobody's more elite than Canelo Alvarez. So that's why I want to see it. It's more the question mark of how good is Caleb Plant? What happens when he fights a high-level fighter of Canelo's status? That's what I want to see. That's the question mark. The other guys, I don't think there are question marks there. And then you say the size. Ooh, their size versus Canelo. We've already seen Canelo go up and destroy a pretty decent light heavyweight. Plus, there's nothing that says that those guys wouldn't have to come down. Maybe he moves up to fight Beterbiev, but Bivol would probably go down. Bivol said he'd go down to 168. So I just... Plant's the fight that I want to see. I don't know about people on social media saying, people weren't even clamoring for that fight. That's the fight. Canelo versus Plant. If we don't get it, I know I'll be disappointed. Will I watch Canelo versus whoever? Of course I will. I watch all the boxing. That's what I do. So it doesn't matter to me, but the general public, I think it matters. I'd prefer to see him versus Plant. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. All right, so let's move on. We've got our first interview, exclusive interview. You're not going to find it anywhere else except on this podcast. Joey Spencer, young, 21-year-old, super welterweight, 12-0, 9 KOs. Very talented with a 75% KO rating. He continues to up his competition level. I'm excited to see him fight. He was a 9-time national champion as an amateur. He trains out of the same gym as Virgil Hunter, Andre Ward. He's got those voices in his corner. Good stuff. Let me introduce him to you on this podcast. Let's kick it to the big interview. Hey, Joey, thank you for taking the time to talk. How are you today?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. I'm really fascinated with your rise through the ranks, with your backstory. Well, thank you. I mean, you've been doing a fantastic job. I'm really curious. Growing up in a boxing family, I call it a boxing family. Your dad was an amateur boxer. Your adopted brother Kel is a very talented amateur boxer. Tell me a little bit about that. How did he end up joining your family?
Yeah, so he was adopted when he was about 2 years old, and he's just been with us ever since. He grew up in the gym. He grew up boxing. It's been an incredible ride. I'm so thankful that he's a part of our family and that he's my brother, and that I got to have a brother like him growing up and still to this day in the gym training. And it's funny you ask about him because we're sitting in the room together and he just got the call that his pro debut is going to be on the Pacquiao versus Spence undercard. So we're all pretty excited. I literally found that out 5 seconds ago. So we were all just kind of celebrating before we got on the phone. So it's going to be, it's awesome. So
wow.
Yeah, we're about to start tearing it up together.
That's awesome. I mean, that's amazing news, and I'm glad to hear it. Tell him congratulations for me.
Yeah, I will.
As far as having, obviously a brother with you, working out, going through the process with you, how has he aided you in your development as a fighter?
Oh, like crazy. We do similar things, but we got very different styles and attributes. And he fights a lot different than me. He's ambidextrous, and he's got two. He can fight just as well southpaw as his right-hander, and vice versa. Like really, you don't know what. I can't tell you what he's better at. Is southpaw or right-handed. So whenever I need to, we tech spar a lot. We get in together in the ring and have a lot of great sessions that way, where we're just touching and being competitive, and I'm learning a lot from him, and then he learns a lot from me, and it's great.
I mean, you've always put, from the second you step into the gym at 6, start winning national titles, I think when you're like 11 years old.
Yes.
It really seemed like you knew what you wanted, and boxing really became your focus. When did you really feel that this is my future, this is my thing?
Yeah, I think I knew that. Honestly, I wanted to be a pro boxer before I was even before I started winning national championships. When I was 6 years old, when I was in the gym, I already wanted that. But then I started realizing that I could really do it because, and every kid says they're going to be a pro this or a pro that, and maybe that's what people thought when I said that when I was literally 6 years old, when I was in school and kindergarten and things like that, and I was telling people that I wanted to be a pro boxer. But I think people really caught on when I started to win the national championships, and it started to be in the papers, and it started to really become like everyone knew me as Joey the boxer, and eventually, that became my mindset too. Is like I'm gonna become a pro. That was all there was to it. I didn't realize how my journey would take place to get me here, to get me signed with the best management in boxing, the best company in boxing, which is PBC, and um, training out with Andre Ward and with Virgil Hunter, and getting invited to their gym in California and living out there for years and training in all the camps, and then coming here. That's not the way that I saw it happening, but I always saw that I would become a pro, and that's what happened.
And I'm going to ask you about Virgil and Andre Ward and all that in a second. But I read that starting your sophomore year, you were homeschooled. Was that to focus on boxing?
Yes, it was, because that was when I started. I made the USA boxing team, and we were going to be traveling a lot that summer. And the school wasn't giving me much lenience on papers, and it was just becoming very stressful. So we just had to make the tough decision to become homeschooled, and it was just the best decision we could have made, honestly.
And I think when that decision gets made, obviously by your parents and you,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, hey, it's really enabling for you to go after your dream.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And it was great because I still ended up I ended up having more of a childhood than I would have by being homeschooled than I would have, because with the school and the traveling and the boxing, every night I'd go home, I'd box for 2-3 hours, and then I'd do homework, and papers were piling up, homework was piling up, and to be honest, boxing was my main focus. Obviously, I was, that's what I felt like my career was going to be one day, and so by eliminating that, because homeschooling, it's not like I didn't do school, but it's not as rigid, and I can do it on my own schedule. So I was able to have a lot more of a childhood and relationship with friends still, and go and do things and, outside of boxing than I would have if I would have stayed in school and had all that pressure on me.
Mm-hmm. So you go out to California eventually. How did it come about that you start working out in Andre Ward's gym with Virgil Hunter? How did that all come together?
Yeah, so I had an injury, and I went and worked with a physical therapist out in California named Lisa, and she was the one who did Andre Ward's physical therapy after he got a shoulder reconstruction, and I don't know if you remember that, but it was kind of later in his career, but like right before the light heavyweight part of his career, and he got his surgery done, and I was working with her with a similar injury, and then as I get done with the physical therapy, I stayed out there for a summer just to work with her. And it wasn't just physical therapy. We were also training. She also does a lot of strength and conditioning work and stuff like that. So I was just spending the summer out there just trying to become better athletically, and then also work on some injuries and things like that. And then she got us an invitation into the gym with Andre Ward, which was my favorite fighter, childhood idol. I watched him every day. And so I thought I was just blessed, and I was so excited to be able to go in and be able to just train and spar in his gym.
Do you consider
his gym?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you kind of consider him a de facto mentor once you start going in that gym with him?
It was it was such a big part of my development, and to this day, I tell people all the time that I think about every day that I'm in the gym. I hold myself to a standard that he set, because I was around. Because I've been around a lot of pro boxers, and I've never seen somebody keep a pace that he keeps, because he's so focused and he's so disciplined and he respects the sport so much. I've seen people train. No one trains like him, but then outside of training, how disciplined he is. And I realize if I want to be the best, then that's the standard. And so, I tell people all the time that's so big. That was huge for me. And it was just it was a God thing. I like I said, I had an injury, and I thought it was a bigger deal than what it was, and we were concerned about it and concerned about my future in the sport. And we go out there and we work with this physical therapist, and then I end up being in the gym for 3 years. I feel like God just put me in that position and took me to that gym and was setting up my future for me. And I felt like that was always what was going on. So
Obviously, being such a famous gym, you had guys like Amir Khan, Andre Berto, Peter Quillen coming in there. When those guys are in the gym with you, do you kind of take bits and pieces and kind of watch them and the things that they're doing and kind of pull from them and the things that you like that they're doing that work for you?
yeah, for sure, absolutely. And just I watched all of them. I felt like they all had different styles of me, but I definitely took things from them and learned from them as well. But from the time that I was a kid, I had studied Andre Ward, so being able to see him up close in person, I felt like I took the most from him because I took the most from his style because I wanted it to. I liked. I wanted to add a lot of what he had to my game.
Mm-hmm. And I see that, you talked about the shoulder injury a little bit. Before you fight Isaiah Selden in your last fight, you come down with COVID, you get sick, the bout's in question, but you keep working at it, you get the fight, you come away with a sensational knockout victory. Would you say that struggle with COVID and that obstacle was, the biggest of your professional career so far?
Yeah, it was one of them. I've had quite a few lately, and I've had quite a few in my career. I've had to deal with quite a bit. People, I was just talking in this other interview about people don't really see what we have to go through, and I got COVID, and it really affected me pretty bad. It messed me up, and but I've had other things like that. I've gotten severely. I'm severely allergic to poison ivy. I've been 2 weeks out from a fight and get an insane break out of poison ivy all over my face, and like I get it so bad my head swells up. It's very bad. And I had that a couple weeks out from one of my fights. I just had this broken hand. I've gotten sick the night before fights. With the flu, and I've been sick in other camps 1 week before the fight. Like it's always something. We have to deal with a lot, and that's the part that people don't really see. But it makes you very mentally strong.
Is one of the things that you've learned is kind of to expect the unexpected.
Absolutely. I've just gotten very good at being uncomfortable. I've had to become good at being uncomfortable. And again, but like I said, I know he's always putting me through things to make me stronger. And that's what makes us stronger is adversity. If everything was easy, we'd never get stronger. And I know that even though it's not always easy, I know God put certain circumstances in my life, and it's always been for the better in my life later on, not just in boxing, but as a person.
I know that from my perspective, every single fight, I see that growth. I see something special as you progress against your upcoming opponent, Dan Carpensi. What do you have a set of goals for yourself in this fight? Are there specific things that you're looking to show in this particular fight?
Well, I was just telling my dad the other day I would like to go some rounds if possible, and see if we can show some things that I haven't been able to show in the past. But I don't know if this is going to be the one to do that. I feel like with his style and the way that I fight, I'm going to need to go out there and try to get him out of. Not try to. I don't need to, but I would like to go out there and get him out of there early, and end the night. And so I don't know if this is going to be that fight, but I know that there's a lot that people haven't seen yet because I just haven't had the rounds to show it. And the rounds that I have had to show it are the nights that I told you that I've been sick and I've had injuries and been messed up. So I haven't had many opportunities to go rounds and show people what I can do. So I'm looking forward to 2022. I plan on stepping it up. I've been off for 6 months almost, so this is a good fight to come back to, and then go into another couple slight step up, but warm up fights just to finish off the year and stay active. And then 2022, I'm looking to come in and make a statement.
I know that, when everybody's a critic, right? I mean, you have, people watching at home, you have people on social media, there's expectations. When you hear from like someone like Boo Boom Mancini criticizing you for your level of opposition, is that disheartening, or do you just kind of just mute it? How do you deal with criticism like that?
No, it is. It's just, you learn, it did bother me at the beginning. You just learn when you're it all makes you kind of grow up in the tour faster, because you just got to realize that just all of it is just noise, and it doesn't matter. It's just it just doesn't matter. Everyone's got an opinion, and you can't be mad at someone for having their opinion. And at the end of the day, but when you see things like that, everyone wants to say something, and a lot of times it's the hardest when it comes from former pro fighters, because they should know how it works. I was 18 when he was talking about that, about my level of opposition, but he fought people, and this isn't any disrespect to him, but it just goes back to like wishing that pro fighters would remember how it was, because it's the same for all of us. And he fought fighters in his first 5 fights that had 0 wins, or 1 win and 8 losses, 1 win and 9 losses. Like, we all do the same thing. We all go through the same process. So, I was 18 then, and I think most of my last fights have had good records. My last 5 or 6 fights have had good records, and yeah.
Well, you're obviously doing something right. You've impressed Andre Ward, Virgil Hunter, and me as well. So keep doing what you're doing. And let's not forget, you're only 21 years old. You're very young, and I think you're way ahead of the curve. So I look to seeing your next fight, and best of luck to you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
Joey Spencer, such a nice guy. You can't help but root for him. Gave us some big news there too. Breaking news: his brother Kel turning pro on the undercard of Spence versus Pacquiao. That's big news. That's another contender that's on the way. Watch out for the Spencer brothers, man. They know their stuff. I'm really excited. I can't wait to see Kel in the ring. Can't wait to see Joey in the ring this weekend. Now let's flip the script. Let's talk a little bit about Olympic boxing. Team USA looking pretty good. We're advancing further and further into the tournament, but beyond just Team USA, let's take a look at the scope of the world. Every Olympics produces a big fighter that goes on to win title. Multiple people that go on to win titles. Out of this crop of Olympians, who are going to be the next big champions? I don't know. Okay. I wish I did that much homework on the Olympics. I'm not as into the amateur game as I am in the pro game. I keep tabs on it, but it's not my main thing, which is why I have to bring in people like my next guest, Lucas Cattell, aka Lukie Boxing, because other than Jake Donovan out there, it's been him and Jake Donovan who I've been watching on Twitter. Their news and their recaps of what's going on in the Olympics have given me that information. I get an education. So let's bring them in for our expert opinion on the Olympics. Let's kick it to Lukie. Today's first expert opinion segment coming from Lucas Cattell, aka Lukie Boxing. He's a boxing podcaster, editor for itrboxing.com, runs Inside the Ropes YouTube channel at ITR Boxing. You can find him on Twitter at Lukie Boxing, Instagram at ITR Boxing. Lukie, thank you for joining me today.
I mean, thank you for having. I mean, I'm really just like a fan. Really, I'm just a fan that shares opinions. I mean, it's an honor to be on a distinguished channel like yours, and it's an honor to be brought on as a form of an expert and compared to people who are much more professional than me. So I appreciate you taking time to have me on.
Well, no doubt, and I do consider you an expert. I mean, you talk to so many different people in the sport of boxing. You take everything in. You have really good opinions, and really for my knowledge of Olympic boxing, I would say I'm a novice. I try to keep up with who are the up and coming fighters, who are the amateurs that are going to be making noise, because that's the future of the sport. And of course, Olympic is this proving ground, but really I've been looking at Jake Donovan, who's in Tokyo right now for boxingscene.com. And I've been keeping up with your Twitter account and your updates, because you've got some really great opinions on these guys, and I'm eager to hear what you have to say.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, for me, it's a great routine being on the West Coast, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. I'm an older guy. I go to bed about 10:30. So, I mean, it's great for my evening. Instead of watching these binge-worthy Netflix shows, now I can watch boxing. I can share an opinion. I have no obligation to ever detail the facts like Jake on every single fight. So I can just share what I find interesting. It's very refreshing. And then in the morning, in about 30 minutes to an hour, I can just go through all the fights I sleep through. Or like last night, someone called me 5 times in the morning at 4 in the morning to let me know about what had happened. So For me, it's very enjoyable because how many pro boxing, and now I'm doing what I told you I didn't want to do, where I'm just talking too long, right? But how many boxing cards do you, me sit down and we basically tune in to watch a fighter that we think will be a very good fighter? He's going to mean a lot to us on Saturday nights, but the guy he's fighting probably can't beat him, or he has to
Mhm.
have the fight of the century to beat him. In the Olympics, every night there's at least two fights that are fairly competitive. And it's like
Mhm.
there's something about that that for me, as someone that loves the sport of boxing, it just gets me so excited night after night because this is so pure. And the concept of being a global event where the whole world is watching, it's very refreshing to the not so global event of American boxing, where it's just us, the niche audience, tuning in week after week, kind of the beat down, grizzled veterans of boxing Twitter who are developing whatever we are in our middle adulthood. There's something so innocent and pure, like dealing with a young college kid and trying to guide them as rightly through the world through your veteran experience.
Now, I think you said something interesting there. There have been a lot of close bouts. We've seen a lot of split decisions so far in this Olympic boxing tournament. Do you feel like that the rules changes that occurred in 2016, where you have 5 judges going on a 10-9 scoring system, more like the professionals, has really changed the quality of judging of these bouts?
Oh my god, like, I could not watch every fight if these didn't feel like pro fights. So
Hmm.
the fact that they've taken the headgear off in the men's, and the fact that they're scoring them as pro fights and not based off that stupid point system where it's like, you're like, "Well, I think this guy's really," because you still get that, like, there was a fight, Albert Menji fought Aiden Walsh in the, now this is crazy because I'm doing this off the top of my head, in the lightweight division, not looking at my notes. Albert Menji is this guy from Cameroon who, if I was a promoter, you could probably sign him for not a huge signing bonus, but this guy is a raw talent who I view in the realm of like a Isaac Dogbe, Fa Ajagba. There's something there, but I don't know if he's been like fully developed. But
Hmm.
there's something unique about him, and he kind of went viral in his first fight. He stopped a guy and he did this dance in the ring, and he beat the brakes off of Ireland through my perception of the fight, and he lost 30-25 on the judges' cards. And there's not a lot of these in this Olympics, but you get some of these fights where you're like, if this was a pro fight, this guy would have won. In
Hmm.
amateur boxing, this guy's fighting a fight to win an amateur boxing fight, but he's what I call, and I stole this term from Mike Altamira, who's a probably like one of the best boxing minds in amateur boxing in the world, professional amateur. So you're running into these professional amateurs, these guys who are going to be in the amateurs till they're 30, or they're going to have a amateur. So the Cubans, the Castillo, who lost last night in the heavyweights, the heavyweight division in the Olympics is the king of the professional amateur, where there's like these guys fight in a style that will probably not transfer to the pros. And
Hmm.
that is kind of the culture shock. And I know I probably gave you a non answer, but I'm going my own way with the answer. Is the big takeaway from the new scoring system is it's the battle of the pro ready boxer versus the amateur boxer, that this is their Super Bowl, where they're probably not going to be a good pro. They're probably going to be in the system, and it's kind of a give and take on which style gets rewarded.
Hmm. And I think that's really well said. I'm really curious to hear what you think about Team USA. Again, there was always drama with how teams are selected. Throw COVID into the mix. The team getting reshuffled again with new rules, different eliminators that weren't allowed to take place because of that, which affected everybody worldwide to a degree. Um, Looking at Team USA right now as a whole, before the Olympics and now where we're at right now, what was your opinion before and what's your opinion of them at this point?
Well, I think they're badass, but I mean, it's just unfortunate, right? Because like someone that I think is going to be a great pro, and I'm excited for, and he has a great fight tonight. Troy Isley. He's fighting the only guy that I thought might give Troy issues. Troy gets in the second round, Gleb Bakashi. I'm like, Troy's going to make it to the finals or the medal rounds as long as he doesn't run into this guy. He runs into this guy, so now he's got to beat the best guy. If he beats this guy, he's going to medal, because this guy to me is the only guy I saw as a guy who could potentially give him issues. Troy lost at the Olympic trials. Javier Martinez won the Olympic trials. Joe Sugar, I think Sugar Hicks got the Olympic spot, round robin, no qualifier, and now we're back to Troy Isley. Troy did nothing wrong, But now try explaining that to someone that's a casual fan. Now go to the pros, say Troy wins a medal, which if he wins a medal, he earns it. He fights some of the best guys. Imagining the marketing tools from pro boxing saying we have the guy that really should have gotten it. Imagine all of that. So much confusion. Another confusing one is Keyshawn. He was kicked off the team. You have Charlie Sheehy, fantastic amateur. There was Tito Mercado, was the runner-up. Tito was sick. He didn't fight him at the Olympic trials. He takes the spot. Tito Mercado is going to fight for Nicaragua. Now Keyshawn's back. It just created a lot of confusion where I think the American fight fans, they knew names from some of these fighters being pro boxers, but it was too difficult to follow the journey of the fighter themselves and to build maybe a Sugar Ray Leonard from start to bottom. And I'm looking at a guy who to me is having the tournament, the best USA boxing tournament so far is Delonte Tiger Johnson. Big shout out to Prentice Brewer and his coach Safo. Prentice in the first fight fought an Argentinian Brian. See, I'm not even looking at my notes. Brian like Araguay. And I apologize once again. I'm going on one of these heaters where I'm just going all for a long period of time. But he had this great win, but he gets dropped in the second round. Then he beats Kazakhstan, who he's betting underdog against, gets cut in the fight. And I'm praying, please let Tiger fight in the next round. He's gonna medal. I think that it's gonna be Tiger versus Pat McCormick, who is Great Britain's. People are looking at him like he's Keyshawn Davis in Great Britain. He's their big one. He's got a twin brother named Luke McCormick who fights in the welterweight division. Please shut me up if I'm going too long as well. And because I always hate it when like there's no back and forth and all that. But the thing is, Pat McCormick versus Tiger Johnson. Going into these games, I created comparisons, and I know that one boxer wasn't too fond of me doing comparisons, but I do comparisons because I think when you look at the NFL draft or the NBA draft, people want at least to know some kind of ceiling or a type of guy. And Tiger Johnson stood out to me as Ricardo Williams Jr. And it's interesting. Ricardo Williams Jr. was a silver medalist in the Olympics. And isn't that interesting that he's very well could be a silver or gold medalist? I'm like, I kind of felt good in that assessment. I know he has to get through Cuba, but Cuba looked awful in their last fight. So I'll stop and then you can kind of just keep going with questions.
No, like I said, the knowledge there, and you kept talking about Johnson, and you were, even from his first round fight, you were talking about how he was impressing you, and he really has looked fantastic. So I would say that he's probably going to benefit a lot from these Olympics, especially if he goes on, beats Raniel Iglesias in the next round, and I think who's the draw from Cuba. Taking a look at where things are right now, because I know depending on the division, we're a little bit all over the place, you know, whether some are still in the round of 32, round of 16, quarterfinals. Based on where we're at right now, as a whole, who's alive that you feel that people might be sleeping on or maybe aren't paying attention to that really has a shot at medaling that people didn't consider medaling?
Oh, you gave me I was going to go somewhere else, but because I have guys that are kind of like my guys, the Lukie deep dive. I'm going to build the non-American fight team that if I was a promoter, I've got like my hidden gem list, but those guys are probably not going to medal my hidden gems. I think that I will give you a fighter that I actually am not that high on, which is the best answer for this, but a fighter that I see medaling is Mervyn Clare. I see him getting a bronze maybe. And he's a guy that's never stood out to me in this Olympic Games. He's a guy that in the world competitions never stood out to me, but he's having a great tournament at welterweight. And I really see him having a path to fighting Pat McCormick. Now, Pat McCormick, UK fans, don't beat me up, okay? I'm very harmless. I'm not the toughest guy. I'm very easy to assault. So please don't do that. I cry and stuff. Pat McCormick reminds me of Luke Campbell. So
Okay.
and Luke Campbell's a gold medal Olympian. So maybe that's a fair comparison, but that was my gut instinct. So Mervyn Clare is a guy I'm looking at to medal. I think Sina Irie from Japan in women's featherweight, being from the host country of Japan, she's going on a run. I think she's one of those fighters you don't want to run into, not just because she's talented. She's got the super amateur moving style. If it's a close fight, you kind of know where the cards are going probably. When it's the host country of Japan, it's not a super watch division. I think in that division also Chris Artingstall of Great Britain. Artingstall is someone that I'm looking at to medal in light heavyweight, maybe a Ben Whitaker. I've kind of assessed him as maybe like a Caleb Plant fighter. He's a flashy mover, fast hands. I don't know if the UK fans are going to get behind him for some reason or not. Like they just don't seem as drawn to him. The division that I'm having the hardest time assessing is flyweight because that's like murderer's row. And I actually thought it would be punishment to watch flyweight. I know that sounds terrible, but like I was like, yeah, this isn't going to be good. But they're really good, but we won't get into that division just yet. The let's promote let's Lukie the promoter get on here. So Duke Reagan, one of our homegrown guys, Cincinnati stand up, I wish is that Steel City?
I believe it is. Yeah.
Okay, I want to. So Steel City, stand up. Feel free to stand up. Duke Reagan taking on Surik Turmanazov. Killed it from Kazakhstan. said it perfect pronunciation. These two are fighting tonight on Tuesday. This fight should create a medalist because the Kazakhstani fighter, who I'm gonna just butcher his name once again, he gave a guy a standing 8 count. He's physical and tough. Duke fought basically a jailhouse version of a French fighter who was like hitting him with all he was missing was Mr. Fuji throwing salt from outside the ring. He was hitting him with like rabbit punches, tossing him, dipping him.
Mhm.
So the winner of this fight, I think, is in a class of their own in this division. But this is going to be a telling one. So if you want to watch an American fight, cheer for our guy Duke. And the thing I like about Duke is I've always been the underdog, or at least I've always had a chip on my shoulder. So even if I wasn't the underdog, I felt like I was the underdog because I'm the irrational mad at the world guy. Relate to the Charlos, where the Charlos enter fight week and they've got some rivalry with someone for no reason. That's me. I'll start a rivalry just to get myself motivated. So Duke is the underappreciated, really great featherweight of this era. We've had Mark Castro in his division. Bruce Carrington won the Olympic trials. Duke was number 1 for a very long time, and he's done well in international competition. He's signed with Top Rank. He's got a great team behind him, but you don't hear him mentioned the same way as some of these other fighters fight. So I think that if you're looking for a compelling story, if Duke can win this, Duke is a guy that I'd love to see have a moment where he gets to shine and be the great fighter that I believe he is.
Talking about Ohio for a second, and I know this is a family that you're close with. Looking at, well, actually, I'm going to go a different. I was going to talk about O'Shea Jones as far as her chances of medaling. What are we thinking about her? I mean, so far she's looked fantastic, coming from the Jones family, Rashawn Jones, Otha Jones Jr., O'Shea Jones III. I mean, they're such a great family, and things are really moving. What are you seeing with her right now?
I mean, to come out of Toledo, Ohio, you can't be soft. And then to come out of the Jones fighting family, you really can't be soft. So, I mean, it's like that's the best of both worlds in terms of an Olympic fighter. Now, this bracket, when I'm looking at it, like O'Shea, well, let me just say Shay, so I act like I know her. So Shay had a tough fight. She fought Mexico, and she fought a girl who probably weighs, some might say, 190 to 200 pounds, coming down to the women's welterweight division, a big girl. And in the broadcast, they said one of her heroes is Juan Manuel Marquez. And if you're cheering for the American, you go, wait, I don't want to fight a boxer whose hero is Marquez. We want one of those come forward, blood and guts heroes where that doesn't work in a 3-round fight as well. So she had to really put forth a performance where she had to box. I thought she won all 3 rounds. I think that she's the highest skilled athlete in this division. If you're asking, I do think that she's going to medal. I think this is the US's best chance for a gold medal. Now, where it gets interesting is I see 2 people that could cause problems, but I don't really see them being that much. I think the semifinals bout is going to be between her and, oh my God, this girl from Mozambique. So Asinda Renaguana. So between those two, Shay and Asinda I believe she got a stoppage today. And the way she got it is she sets up really awkward kind of uppercuts off of her jab, that their lead uppercuts, and then she kind of puts, I think Adam Booth once referred to it as the blender. So once she lands a clean punch, all of a sudden it's like it's like a flurry of punches come. So it's almost very overwhelming. I think O'Shea has the ability to just outbox her. She's a little long and lanky, which is a little awkward. She, to me, is the biggest threat to Shea. There's a Turkey fighter who, oh my God, this is going to be another great Lukie annunciation. Bus Buznaz Sermonelli. She's basically like a heat-seeking missile. So she sees movement in the ring and she comes forward, really physically strong. If Shea were to fight her in the gold medal round, which I'm assuming she will, I mean, that's probably going to be a textbook boxing decision. Like, I think she'll just box her up. Shea has, when you look at all these fighters, the girl from Mozambique is the closest to being pro ready, but I'm not seeing many fighters that are all well rounded. O'Shea Jones is impressive to me because she has elements of a high level professional fighter like a Mike McCallum, maybe Aaron Pryor, old school Ohio fighter. Not saying that she is that, but she has elements of that. And in women's boxing, you normally see either a more amateur style or someone that's not fully developed and pro ready. So to see someone this far ahead of her peers, it's pretty impressive.
And that's why I brought her name up too, because not just because of the connection to the Jones name and the Jones family, but looking at the brackets, it really does look like she's got the best path to the gold medal. That if you're looking for a gold medalist in this Team USA, not that the others aren't capable, but I just see that road there for her. It just seems like I see the path for her, is basically what I'm saying.
I mean, her and Naomi Graham have some pretty good paths. The thing with Naomi is she might have to face one of the best women's box. Like, I think this girl named Lauren Price is going to be a star in boxing. I've always said that the kind of Ronda Rousey of boxing is going to be a girl that's from the heavier weight classes, that has knockout power, that she keeps going lower and lower in weight, and maybe they transition it with like a fitness journey. I'm going to get in shape with me, and they kind of transcend the sport of boxing. That's the way in my head I see it. I think Lauren Price might be one of these girls that kind of becomes a bigger name if she plays her cards right. And the unfortunate thing is Naomi Graham's probably going to run into her in the final. She has a tough draw with Russia, but I mean, I'm looking at her. Keyshawn Davis, obviously, we're looking at his good path, but I don't love Keyshawn's fight against France. He should beat France, but he's fighting the French fighter who beat Teofimo Lopez. He's the number 1 seed. And he's a super amateur fighter, which you kind of live in fear, because the guy that Keyshawn's had trouble with is Andy Cruz. Andy Cruz is going to be a god awful pro. He's going to be one of these elusive, no one's going to want to watch him fight. Some people will tell you what he's doing is so beautiful, no ability to fight on the inside. It's just going to be rough. Keyshawn's going to be a solid pro. He's going to for sure win a world title. We're not going to write his book before it's written, but I see that he'll be a world title fighter, and he has the potential to do far greater. With a guy like that, you always worry about the super amateur fighter, because they might go to super amateur land, touch, move. And then Keyshawn has to be the spectacular athlete with hand speed, with technical awareness, where he has to throw beatdown city upon this fighter who's literally trying to point him. I think he can get by most of these guys. I just worry about that because there's so much pressure on Keyshawn Davis's shoulders, being kind of the face of USA boxing this year.
I think that's really well put. Being the face and being a guy that's already a professional that people have these high expectations for. I'm going to ask you about one more specific bout, and then I got 2 other areas I want to go with you. One fight that I'm looking at here, just looking through what we have to come. Rashida Ellis versus Caroline Dubois. What are we thinking about that one?
Well, I mean, shoot, I put this out on the Twitter sphere as well. I mean, not just do I love this fight, and I'm not sure if you're aware, you're a very smart guy, so you probably know this. I pulled up the bracket. Is Daniel Dubois that's his sister, and I believe there's like 11 children. I was doing some half-assed research, so it could have been like 10 or 12. I think the number is 11, but 11. One of 11 children. I was, you're trying to do some research, so if you do these type of things, you can have some fun things to throw out there. But Caroline Dubois is kind of like the well-rounded amateur that knows how to win an amateur fight, but she's going to be a solid pro. And what I mean by that is she always turns in angles, and then within every 3 seconds, there's going to be a form of a punch coming. They're typically straight punches. She's trying to keep distance. It's jab and then a straight. Jab, straight, turn, angle, move. It's a very much a system in place. You can see what she's trying to do. It's a very systematic approach to just win the fight. Rashida Ellis is a dynamic fighter who I feel is a cross between a professional style and an amateur style. Rashida to me has far more of a ceiling. She has, speaking of siblings, this is a pro boxing sibling bout. Speedy Ellis and Ronald Ellis are her brothers. So it's kind of like interesting that they would clash on that. I think these two will fight again as pro fighters because it's just an interesting matchup. I think this really comes down to Rashida Ellis's mindset because I like Rashida Ellis a lot. The only thing that's ever scared me, because she beat some very good fighters, Amelia Moore, Stacey Suttles, very, very good boxers in the US that are capable of medaling internationally. She ran into the lightweight Mavia Harmadouche, who's going to fight Michaela Mayer next. She's a current world champion. And that was a very hard fight for her. And I believe, off of my memory, I'm not going off notes, so that's the best way to say things wrong. That was her last time having international competition. I think she might have had a fight here or there, but that was her last really high level fight. And that's a jarring image for me to shake. So Ellis has to really come out and perform to take back this tournament. I favor Ellis, but this is really a 50-50 fight. And I think that no matter what the outcome, we will see it again in the pros.
I love that combination too. Yes, I mean, both families are boxing families. They have that sibling connection. So you know that they're immersed in this lifestyle. And I think that that's going to be one that I really want to see. Next question. I got two more big questions for you.
Go for it, for wherever you want.
Top 3 weight classes. If someone's going to tune in to see the quarterfinals of just 3 weight classes in this thing, men's or women's, what would you say? What are the top 3 weight classes for you?
I'd say men's featherweight is really exceptional. Man, this is tough. The top 3 is a tough one. I'd say let me rephrase it, because I personally like men's featherweight, but I think for most people, they want fighters that they're going to see on their TV screen. So I think the best fights to see would be men's lightweight, men's welterweight, and women's flyweight. Women's flyweight's pretty deep. So I'd say those 3 because I think that the women are pretty darn exceptional. This is the 3rd time that women have been in the Olympic Games, and I think we're getting very close to having our $1 million women's transcendent boxing superstar, because that amateur pedigree is now generational. Now there's been a whole decade of girls that know nothing else than a path to the Olympics. So I think we're going to start seeing some special fighters. So I think it's definitely worth your time to start watching some of these women's bouts, in my opinion.
We obviously already have some professionals in this tournament right now. People that, as you said, you could see Keyshawn Davis becoming a world champion. I don't know if he can become a champion, but Bakhmadir Jalalov of is it Uzbekistan on the heavyweight division is intriguing, and obviously he's been
super
great
heavyweight.
Not to be
a nerd,
Gotcha.
But I mean the heavyweight is the cruiserweight boring division.
And I'm thinking heavyweight and pros. That's where I get my wires crossed. So yes, super heavyweight here, heavyweight in professional boxing. If you're looking at just pure amateurs right now, it doesn't matter if they've been eliminated or whatever. If you're talking about just 3 boxers that if you're a promoter that you're going to sign that you think have the chance to be maybe a world champion, who are you going after?
Well, shit, I over-prepared for this question. I had so many in here. My number one guy is this guy from the Russian Olympic Committee. He's probably going to get outboxed. He fights tonight, but he reminds me of Artur Beterbiev meets Sergey Kovalev. His name is Imam Katov. And this guy is just so much. He gave someone 5 standing 8 counts. He just takes you to beat down city. I could just imagine with matchmaking what you could get. I'm looking through here because now I don't want to just give you a whole bunch of names. I personally, like, if I was trying to buy low and get a high return on investment, I would take the whole Polish boxing team because they're just like really friggin' tough. Every Polish fighter is mean and nasty, and it seems like they got like a makeshift team. I would just move the whole team and put them with an established coach and just see what happens. Because at the very least, you'd probably get one fighter that's an Avni Yildirim. And I
Mhm.
know some listeners might go, well, he's not the greatest fighter. Yes, but that's a fighter that's been in a big money fight. And I think that when a lot of people like the pro promoters are looking at these type of guys, they're not just looking at the longevity of the sport, they're also looking at the preservation of how can we maximize our dollar. So I'm looking out to see like what type of fighter do you want? Do you want a pressure fighter? Do you want a pure boxer?
I'm thinking like potential world titleist someday.
There was a guy, let me pull up this guy. So I'll give you a guy that like I mean there's a bunch of them in here to be honest with you. Like
Mhm.
there's guys that could be there like um I over prepared. So I just have a bunch of these where I'm going through them. Like a guy like Javid Kaliabov, men's lightweight. He's like an Abel Sanchez type pressure fighter. Havens Bakov of Armenia. He's kind of like Arthur Abraham 2.0. Vanderson Oliveira from Brazil. He's just an elusive guy that captured my attention. So it's like that's like a kind of guy where do I think he could be a world champion? Maybe. Do I think he can always be competitive with a top 15 guy when he gets to that point? That's a guy that I think is going to be signed and very interesting. And if he moved down to light heavyweight, is Emmanuel Reyes. He got a knockout over Vasil Levitt, who is a amateur boxing legend in the heavyweight division.
Mhm.
And to me, it's like this guy knocked out kind of this legendary amateur boxer who was kind of known for being boring from Kazakhstan, stops him. Imagine he goes down to light heavyweight, and then we have Iman Katov. You could match those two, Spain versus Russia in 4 to 5 years. So those are some guys besides like just the normal guys that you know.
Yeah, and then Reyes was interesting too because he's a Cuban that's now fighting out of Spain, right?
Which I believe is the formula if you're trying to turn pro, is that you
Yeah.
kind of are like, yeah, because there was also a Sotomayor who I'm trying to remember what guy stopped him, but he got stopped on a cut and he was an Azerbaijani fighting out of Cuban. So we're kind of seeing some of these Cubans that I think it might be hinted based on their affiliation of where they are that they might have their eyes on maybe going professional and maybe they relocated to a team to have a chance with someone else.
And I agree with that 100%. Lukie, you said it all, man. You gave me a very thorough breakdown. I think that people listening to this podcast are going to be much more educated because I had you on. You gave me an education. Thank you so much for coming on and breaking it down for me.
Right on.
There you go. What do you got going on? Where can people follow you one last time? What do you got happening?
I mean, I don't really care if people follow me. Just follow your program, Lukie Boxing. I have like a Substack, so if you want a boxing schedule, and I'll tell people like I'll give them your email and all that stuff, and I'll tell you about club shows and all the stuff, anything relevant. ITR Boxing, I write a little bit. I don't really care if people read it though. Like that's the funny thing about me. I just kind of do it for self-preservation. Um, so I mean, if you enjoy my opinions, if you want the content I make, that's fine. And I have a podcast. If you want to hear more of me, you think I'm a cool guy, just hit me up on one of these things and I'll show you how to get to it. But I don't really care. So, I mean,
See,
just
and
follow us for you.
that's why you're such a cool guy. I'm curious about the Substack. If someone wants to get that in their inbox, how do they go about doing that?
Lukie Boxing, and it's spelled correctly, no slang, Lukie, and then boxing, no mispronunciation, just boxing.substack.com, spelled correctly, everything. And then I guess you go on there and you sign up, but I'm doing that because it's like a weekly fight schedule. So you don't just have to look at it. I can give you some context, like this is gonna be a squash match, but then like for example, like I'll give you a example. Like Michael Coffey is fighting Gerald Washington.
He was.
It oh, is it over already? Or
Washington's out, now replaced by Jonathan Rice.
amazing. Well, actually, that might be a harder fight in a weird
Yeah,
way.
yeah. Washington came down with COVID.
Okay, so yeah, you're breaking new. This shows you how relevant I am. But like in my breakdown of that fight, which I will now not have on the Substack, it's like how that's a Navy versus Marines bout, right? So you got
Mhm.
like the Marine versus the Navy, but then you also are looking at it from matchmaker's perspective. Kawanaki had fought in Gerald Washington. Big Baby Miller had fought this guy. Michael Coffey feels like a guy that he's in the main event spot and they're seeing how much can Michael Coffey, what's his ceiling? So we got to put him in with guys that can test the ceiling, that have been with other guys who have gone on to do greater things like Deontay Wilder.
Mhm.
Is Michael Coffey comparable to Wilder? Could Michael Coffey one day fight Wilder? So if you watch this fight, if you were watching it, maybe Washington may or may not win, but now you could look at it from the lens of, is Michael Coffey ever going to be at a level where he can fight one of these guys that we have a meaningful attachment to, that's an A side, that's a heavyweight, which, I mean, how old's Coffey? Like 32, 33?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
So he's got to get going, right? Because if he wants to make $1 million and do this, I'm sure he's not trying to like be a boxer in his mid to late 30s. That would be kind of
Mhm.
crazy unless he's making a ton of money. So the thing is, probably with the fight was built to be like, okay, get this, and then we're gonna probably put you in with Kawanaki. You beat Kawanaki. Let's see if we can do anything more. So look at this fight as, how far do you think Coffee can be? And that's the kind of info you get on my Substack. It's really compelling.
I dig it and I love it. Check it out. Lukie, thank you again. Well, that was quite an education on Olympic boxing from my man, Lukie. Such knowledge, such insight. Make sure that you check him out on his socials and his channel and his website, itrboxing.com. Really, really good stuff. I learned a lot from that. I hope you guys did too. Next segment, we've got quick hits. I'm going to be sharing a few snippets that I had with several fighters on the Conor Benn versus Adrian Granados media call. First up, Conor Benn himself. When we talked, I asked him about the Samuel Vargas fight, if there was a possibility that he took something away from that fight, and he really, I brought up the fact that kind of his intellect on what to do in a moment in a fight improved, because he was able to sense certain things and use intuition in a way in the moment and react. That got him thinking, and I think he learned something for the first time, or at least really paid attention to it, and surprised himself. And he also gave me some props. So you got to like that. So here's my talk with Conor Benn. Hi, Conor. Thank you for taking the time. In your last fight against Samuel Vargas, obviously you got out to a very hot start. Was that something that you planned on, or did you see something that kind of made you want to engage that fast?
Yeah, I see him. I hit him, obviously. I hit him, and his nose bled up straight away, and his nose started bleeding. He had a mark straight under his eye, and that was with I think 2 or 3 straight 1-2s that I threw, and then I come round the side. I hit him with a jab and then a hook round the side, right hook, or a crooked right hand, and I see his leg buckle, and I thought, nah, mate, I'm on you. You see so many fighters not take these opportunities when they see him. You got to get him out of there.
Even though it was a first round stoppage, the fact that you had that instinct where you saw something that made you react shows to me that there's a level of growth and that you're learning even from a run round fight. Would you say that that's accurate, and that even in that situation, there's still something to take away from it?
I never looked at it like that, but thank you, Jeremy. Because it's I never thought of it like that, but you are right.
Mm-hmm.
Fighter's instinct. You could say there's a level of maturity there in terms of the sport and learning. Also, the accuracy as well was something that we worked on massively. Whereas the formula, I got quite excited and missed quite a few shots. Whereas I managed to stay composed, place my shots with Vargas.
Adrian Granados only been stopped one time in his 8 losses, had a lot of close calls there. Does that mean something as far as being the next person to stop him, or being the second person to stop him? Is there any added goal there as far as stopping him?
It would be nice. but I'm prepared for 12 hard rounds.
Got it. Thank you so much and best of luck.
Thank you.
Always good talking to Conor Benn. Always has a lot to say. One of the other fighters on, before I get there, make sure that you guys check out on my YouTube channel. I also have Adrian Granados talking about his plans to knock out Conor Benn. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But I'm glad that he's confident. I actually think Ben's going to probably stop him at some point in the fight. I'm going to share my preview on my YouTube channel, but that's for a later date. Also on the card is super welterweight Anthony Fowler. Fowler's been making a lot of movement up the super welterweight rankings. He's currently 14-1, 11 KOs, fighting a replacement opponent, Enrico Mueller. And on top of all that, so he's got a replacement opponent. His son was just born 3 days ago. He spent 3 days in the hospital with his wife, so he wasn't getting much sleep. There's a lot of distractions, a lot to be thankful for, but a lot going on. So here's what Anthony Fowler told me about everything going on in his life. Congratulations again on the birth of son Luca. Obviously, you've only been a father for a few days now, but as soon as that happens, it changes your perspective on everything. What's running through your mind and how's it impacting you and your energy level for this fight and your career now?
Yeah, I think I need to get more focused on the boxing rather than my child. It's so hard to switch off from being a dad. It just changes life. I feel different in myself. It's hard to describe. I feel like I'm a dad now. I just feel different. So I need to push that to one side for this week. Go down, do my job. I'm a professional boxer. That's what I've always done. Win me fighting and come home and then get back to being a dad.
You're steadily climbing the ranks. Do you foresee a timeline when maybe you'd like to break in and come visit us in the United States? And is there an ideal opponent that you would have in the next fight or two coming forward?
I just have, I leave it to my team. I don't really try to look too far ahead. I've been concentrating on Roberto Garcia in my head for weeks and weeks and weeks. And even though he's pulled out, I want to get this fight won and then move on. But I need to be climbing the rankings now. I'm not getting any younger. I've got to keep moving forward now and fight these top 10 lads in the world.
Thank you, Anthony. Best of luck and congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Again, congratulations to Anthony Fowler. He's got a lot of good things going on, and it'll get even better if he can get that win over Rico Mueller. Last clip that I'm going to share with you is my talk with Campbell Hatton. It's actually my second time talking to Campbell. I talked to him right before his debut. He's going into his third professional bout on the undercard of Benn versus Granados. He's 2-0. This will be his third fight. I was really curious to hear, hey, what's it like being a pro? Is it what you expected? Is there growth? That sort of thing. And here's what Campbell Hatton had to tell me. Hi, Campbell. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, pal. Are you?
Good. Going into this third fight, what are some of your expectations and do they change from fight to fight? What are some of the things that you're focusing on the most here?
Yeah, we're lucky again where we've known about the opponent for quite a long time and we've been able to get a bit of a game plan together. He's got a decent record, so he's going to come and have a go. He's not going to be someone who's just coming to make the numbers up, and it's quite long and awkward, quite a funny sort of style. So we've been able to work on a few things, which is good for this stage of my career. But we're just building all the time. Really, it's not we're not only working on specific things. We're not just thinking about this fight. We're always building and improving in every area, making sure I'm always a bit stronger or a bit fitter, a bit sharper each fight.
I know that it hasn't been a huge jump in time since your first pro fight to your third pro fight. But what are some of the physical changes and things that you see different in you today than before your first fight?
There's not loads of things physically. I've always sort of trained like a professional since I was about probably 15, 16 years old. We've stepped things up and we do a lot more strength work now than we used to. So probably those sort of things. I'm getting a lot stronger and I think as I'm getting older, like you get that man strength where, say a couple of years ago, people who had say I sparred a professional a couple of years ago, I'd notice how strong they were, whereas now, like the physical side of things, I've like caught them up or like overtaken them. So probably that sort of like the physical, like the strength side of stuff.
Last question for me. Going into the professionals, what are maybe one or two things that are the biggest things that you've learned so far, or what are one or two of the biggest surprises that you've gotten as a professional so far?
I'd say, the toughness of your opponents, where even the lower at the lower end of the sport, like you got the journeyman fighters who you're learning against at the start of your career, but you just how tough they are. They're like the grown men, aren't they? Like, it's not like in the amateurs where you're both the same age and you're both young, where you can break people down a lot easier. Whereas not like these, they've got a lot of pride and it's a grown man, so they are a lot tougher, and that surprised me.
Thank you, Campbell, and good luck this Saturday.
Cheers, mate.
Campbell Hatton, such a nice guy. Always nice to talk to him. I hope for his continued success, obviously coming from the great Hatton name and family. Good luck to him this weekend. Excellent card. That Benn versus Granados card, DAZN, check it out. Of course, you've also got the card on Fox, 8 o'clock, and then switch to FS1 because there's even more great bouts there. Big thanks to all my guests on today's show, from Joey Spencer to Lucas Cattell to the segments that I had with Anthony Fowler, Campbell Hatton, and everybody else that I spoke with. I have more on my YouTube channel, so check it out. Who do I have conversations with? I got a whole list of conversations. I talked to Tommy McCarthy. I talked to Chris Billiam Smith as those two fight in a very intriguing cruiserweight matchup. I also talked to Zhu Can and Lee Wood ahead of their WBA regular featherweight title matchup. Go check that one out. And Sandy Ryan, who's making her pro debut, all up on my YouTube channel. Thank you guys for listening, or thank you guys for watching. Make sure that you subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Go check out my YouTube channel, That Boxing Writer. I've also got a website that'll give you more information on me, thatboxingwriter.com. And of course, my writing up on fansided.com/boxing. See me on social media. If you go to any of those places, you'll have me at A Boxing Writer on Twitter. That's where I get to engage people the most. Great first episode. Hopefully this is the start of something long and wonderful. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.